Hello, this is Kim Nelson. In this video tutorial, I'm going to go into how to do a maquette for a cuff bangle. Maquetting is a critical design tool. A maquette is a three-dimensional sketch. I do my maquettes in Rhino. Before I was digital, I would do them in sticky wax or plastiline or any other material that I could find to sculpt by hand. And now, of course, I do them all in Rhino. Maquettes are also an excellent way to teach and learn basic surfacing techniques in Rhino. So I'm going to start by maquetting this cuff bangle. First thing I need to do is bring in an image. And the image I want to use is a design I sketched hurriedly for this tutorial. And it's going to be a great way to demonstrate one of the first challenges you face when doing something like this. The design is, might as well get the JPEG version of it here. Here we go. So here is the design, loosely sketched in Procreate. Okay. You'll notice that I've drawn the cuff bangle laid out flat with a front view that I seriously suspect is too low in profile to be functional. But like I said, moving quick on my feet. The problem is when I bring this into Rhino, the challenge I'm going to face is, first off, it's a lot of real estate. This is a large image, and I don't like having large images in Rhino. I don't like the foggy background that they create. So first thing I'm going to do is just move these items further together. Before I do that, however, I'm going to need to change the background color so that it is white. Otherwise, in Photoshop, you see what happened before. The background ends up being a different color. I just want to snug this up as close as I reasonably can to that top view. Okay. My next challenge is going to be actual size. I have no actual dimensions in this drawing anywhere. I know it's perfectly accurate size at 300 ppi, but that doesn't really help me in Rhino. Rhino doesn't think in ppi. So I need to have a reference in here that I can use. And my favorite reference to use is a square that I create on my own. So I'm going to create a new canvas here. I'm going to set this to inches. 1 by 1 by 300. That's my new canvas. I'm now going to fill this. So Control A and do a bucket fill to fill that in completely. And then I'm just going to copy it. And I don't need it anymore. Go to the next file here. I'm going to paste this in. So that is 1 inch. Knowing that that's 1 inch will make scaling this in Rhino much easier. So I'm going to move it. I have no way of guaranteeing this is centered in the file. So I'll just put it where it looks visually centered. And since I know in Rhino this image is going to be grayscale anyway, I will go ahead and do that here. So go ahead and flatten my image. And hue saturation. I'll just drop the saturation down to 0 because that's how it's going to look in Rhino anyway. And resave that. So now I have an image that I can work with directly in Rhino. So I'm going to bring that image file in here. Size doesn't matter. going to select it, go to its object properties, and adjust its material so that it is largely transparent. And click the mask option, which will help make the image much more readable. And put that on a layer where it's not in my way. In my template, I actually have a pictures layer. I now need to create some geometry that I can scale that around. I know it's 25.4 millimeters for an inch. So curve, rectangle from center. Starting at 0, 25.4 by 25.4. Go ahead and come in here and draw another rectangle. Above my image from that corner. To that corner. Grab my image layer and do a transform orient 2 points. Scale equals, yes, 3D is fine. It's a two-dimensional object, plane. So 3D, 2D makes no difference. Mid-snap to mid-snap and a mid-snap. So there, it is now in an actual size. It deceivingly looks like it's centered, but it isn't. Now we'll take one more step. Draw a vertical. Offset through point both sides. That's actually surprisingly, no, because I'm doing the wrong thing. I can't go with the grid at that square. I have to go with the cuff itself. So come here. And here. Do a horizontal. And offset to here. And here. And do a fillet set to 0 on the curve to clean that up. And now I'll be able to take this background image and this time move it, enter, from center snap, touching the outside of this square, to 0. And that should now be centered up. To verify that, I can do my offset curve here. Both sides through point. And I should tap both sides of this cuff at the same time. And both sides in the top view as well. Nice. Okay. So there is my image file brought in to the top C-plane, and now it's centered in its scale. I am going to want to orient that so that it also is centered from my top view. Get a nice center line for that drawing. Before I use that, though, I'm going to grab this image and I'm going to rotate it up, because for the front view it is already properly positioned. No sense wasting that. Hide that for now. Back top. Grab this from mid-snap to 0. And that should move that down to where I have two curves on top of each other. But among other things, I am set up now to draw my top view, which is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to offset both sides through point. I'm going to do it again through point both sides. And again. I'm going to take this center line, capture the width, basically going for all of the intersections that in a mechanical drawing I would need access to. So anywhere there's a corner. Basically anything I find really interesting. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to turn off my grid for a minute. And use my fillet curve command, join equals no, to tidy this up a little bit. Somehow either never had or have lost that. Oh, never mind. It's just further over than I thought. There we go. Okay, so I've got that. Now I need to establish the wider body of the piece, which is here. So, and I need to offset so I have the width of this opening. Last thing I'm going to want is that very narrow opening in the middle. Actually, I prefer to see it this way. Okay, so that's a pretty good rough in of the main shapes here. So now I need to actually draw. I'll start with these inside shapes. Catch this pear-shaped opening at its widest point. Trim that off. And trim these two curves at the midline. Actually, I'm going to trim this at the midline. And blend curve. a great way to quickly draw both 2D and 3D curves. Except for I cut the wrong one. Going to come over here, bring a vertical to the widest point here. Okay, so I'll mirror that over and trim out the center. Blend curve, adjustable blend curve once again. I would like a center line here, so from here to here, so that I can use this. To finesse that end. Join those together. I don't like to have a lot of poly curves when I work, so I am going to rebuild this. I think I can maintain the integrity of this curve with roughly 30 points. Actually, that looks like too many. Go down to 22. That's better. Now, you'll notice that I'm drawing, but I'm working in perspective viewport. I always work in perspective viewport. I only work in an orthographic viewport if I need to see something dead on for some specific reason. But if I'm drawing on a piece of paper, that piece of paper is never orthographic to me. It's always being spinned and twirled while I'm working, so this actually feels more honest, more organic to me. It's a maquette, so I'm not going to slave over it. By keeping this relationship at the endpoints, either perfectly horizontal or perfectly vertical across the quadrant of the circle, by moving the point on, then using Shift key to move it back off, I guarantee that I'm going to have a smooth transition across this heel. That's enough. Mirror that around. And mirror it across. And assign it a new color so we don't get it confused. And so there's the center window. I'm going to do the same thing for the outline of the cuff. Cut here. Cut here. Adjustable blend curve. Okay, so what we're seeing is that's too far. So I will trim it here instead to maintain better control. And then from here, I feel like that's cutting that circle, that shape a little shallow. I'm going to move that vertical line out a little bit to give myself a little better flow. When I hold down Shift key and I move one side, it moves the other symmetrically as far as these tangent poles, tangency handles are concerned. It's set to curvature right now, so I have two handles to pull on. The one closest in to the end is the most powerful. The one further out is for, oh, I hit escape instead of enter. There. So that's complete. Join that together, rebuild it. And the same process. In this case, I find that point too close in to be useful, so I deleted it. Turn on my graph. Do that same step over and slide out using Shift key, ortho, to guarantee a nice smooth transition across the top. Curve looks good, curve looks good, curve looks good. Same thing here. This time straight up and down, so that I maintain smoothness across that tangency, across that quadrant. It's fine. Mirror that from side to side. Join them together. Mirror it from top to bottom. Go ahead and join these together. And I've roughed in the top view. Last thing I have to work with are those, I have a couple of things. I have those cabochon marquees. And I have this crease that's in the piece. I am reluctant to even put that crease in at this point. It's from maquette, I don't need it. But I will bring in these stones. I'm going to restore this outline, this box. And I'm going to edit it so that it corresponds to my fair-shaped cabochon. Now, some measurements would be helpful. Distance on this, that's 15 by 328. Okay, and this is, okay, so I've got a 15.5 by an 11.5. Okay, I'm going to do 12 by 16 because that's actually an available size. oriented my circle in a way I didn't expect, my rectangle in a way I didn't expect, but that doesn't affect me one way or the other. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my drawing. I don't want it to influence the shape of this. Draw a circle diameter. Move it into position. Quad mid. Draw a cutting line. Center ortho. Trim off the top. Another center line. Sorry. Using center ortho. Don't want to get my lines confused, so turn off the blue layer for now. Trim off this side. And curve blend curve. I know I want a blunt tip, because cabochons need a blunt tip. Something in that arena. Trim off this. Join these together. Mirror them over with history. Check history. Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to turn on the curvature graph, rebuild and curvature graph. Line these up. Line that up. Sweeten that outline a little bit. That's fine. Join these together. Rotate 90 degrees. Alright, intersect. I had the copy option on, which isn't ideal. I'm going to move this from intersect to intersect. To see what that leaves me with. Get rid of some of these construction lines. In fact, that will get rid of all of the construction lines, except for the main axis lines. Okay, so what I can see is that using a real sized stone is causing havoc with my design. That's something that can happen. First off, I don't have an attachment to even putting stones in there. I hadn't decided if I wanted to for real yet or not. The obvious solution to this, I can either non-uniform scale this, or I can uniform scale it and change the ends a little bit. I'll try both. No change in this direction. Change that until I have a fit, and then no change. You can see that made a substantial shift in my drawing. This becomes substantially more swollen in the middle. Otherwise, it's working okay. Okay. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, undo, paste, move with grid snap, so that I have that variant to look at. Also starting to miss my grid now. So I have that. So now I'm going to try the other solution, which was to grab all of this and do a regular scale. From center. Okay, in doing that, I'm really going to change the whole pronging structure of this setting, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's worth considering. And then how do I then change this to make it so it's still the right length? Offset through point both sides. Grab this endpoint so I know. Use these as an extender, barrier. Make sure that I have my center line all the way out. Okay, so I don't want to mess with anything in here. Here I can toy with. So I'm going to split it. I'm going to take this element and do a non-uniform scale. One for the next direction, and done. I'm going to take a look at that. Actually, I like it. I think that's fine. Explode these out. Throw away the one side here, because there's going to be a kink in my curve right there and a kink in my curve right there. Rebuild. Again, this endpoint is just cramping things. It doesn't achieve anything. Move this over. Slide it out. with ortho. Same thing here. Move it up and then down with ortho. Check the middle where the kink was. Smoothing that out. That curve is done. Same series of steps. I think I can afford to be a little more assertive with that bump. Remove the kink. And fix the end. Okay. And I'll mirror it around. Mirror it around. Top view is complete. There is the top view of this. So, the next thing I need to do is draw the front view. I want all of these curves that are related to the top view to be on that same layer. So it's easy for me to turn them on and off. Bring back my image. And then unhide. And hide this one. And commence drawing my front view. Now my front view is just going to be a couple of lines. Lock my picture. And once again a series of offset curves, through point both sides. To set this up. A center line. And then that pod. And the gap. Okay, that should be enough to draw this. Except for I don't have a horizontal at the widest point, and that is really important for drawing the interior of this. And I see that right there. I'm going to start with an ellipse diameter from intersections. And I see that that has given me very close to what I want. I am going to select it and its center line that I used to create it. Do a non-uniform scale. Nothing in this direction. A slight adjustment in this direction. Nothing in the z-axis. So there, I have that. this is no longer a meaningful curve for me. So now to create the outside parameter of this, use this curve, trim that, and the center line to trim this, and an adjustable blend curve. Sorry, blend curve. Here to here. Start with a symmetrical treatment. Have it take me as far as it can. And then it just handles individually. That's fine. Mirror that across. Cleaning up as I go. Now, this curve is going to be more difficult. Extend by arc to point. That's nice. Okay, so I've got that. Rebuild this section curve. And I would say the 16 original is plenty of points. F10 and curvature graph on. We go ahead and lose this point. And do that same shuffle slide to get a nice smooth flow across the top. Can use a little larger graph. That's fine. So now what I want to do is I want to cut this off at the end here. And the easiest way to do that is just with a straight line. Come out here, plan it on my drawing, both sides, and then draw what feels like a fairly perpendicular treatment. Offset it. That's fine. And then trim off the inside and outside curves. I'm going to need to mirror these over because I can't cut that closed. Ellipse with one curve. Blend curve. That's close enough. And mirror over. Join. So that's it. A top and a front. Okay. I want to take a look now. I'm going to start modeling. I want to take a look at how thick this piece is in the center. Because I have a sense of how thick I think it should be. I see that surface being something like that. Right? Effectively giving me two little cakes like that. I can go with less. Let's see how much less I think I can go with. I can go with that. So what I want to see is how this compares to what I have here already. Five millimeters. 5.6. Okay, I'm good. That is a relief. So it looks like I'll be able to, at least initially, be working with that at the top center. Now let's take a look out on the sides. Come out here to the fattest part of that paddle area there. And the same thing here. How thick do I think I need? To get a good sense of that, I'm going to go ahead and get me, so I'll get myself some curves that I can look at. That makes some sense to me. And here, I'm looking for what the minimum thickness I think I can get away with is. In the center, it was about the ideal. Here, I think I gotta have this much. Alright, how much length is that? That's almost 4 millimeters, 3.8. I have a suspicion that I have a lot less down here than that. This is roughly I'm going to say it's roughly in there. Oh, that's 4.16, so I'm good. Okay. All right. Who am I to argue? Okay. So, my thicknesses as I sketched them turned out to be pretty good. Go experience. I wasn't assuming that I was that fortunate. So, now I have a pretty straightforward job. I need to do a flow to create a sense of what this cuff looks like in real life. So, coming back here, I'm going to make a copy of this. Within Rhino. And with this leftover piece here, I'm going to trim everything out that isn't a solid frame or outline. So there we go. This is what we're going to use to make our maquette with. Now, what I need to really pay attention to is the flow curve. And this will be my flow curve. I have to decide what in the front view this top view flat line represents. Does it represent the inside? Or does it represent the outside? This is important because the only place, if you can visualize, I'll help you visualize it. As you can see, these spaces are narrower inside than they are outside. So if I use the outside line to flow, then what I have here will be accurate at the top surface, but compressed as it comes in. If I use this curve, what I have here will be accurate at the wrist, but expanded as it goes outward. Okay? Generally, I prefer to have it be accurate to the outside edge of this. So that's what I'm going to go with. I'm looking to get a very clean, very simple maquette out of this. So the process I'm going to use to get that, I'm going to copy this to my clipboard to get it someplace safe for a moment. Offset, through point. I'm going to come down to where this widest spot kind of is. And I'm going to use that curve, trim off the top, or the inside. Paste back in my original so I don't lose it. And I'm going to move it out of the way for a minute using grid snap. So, to keep this clean, I'm going to actually create a curve that is slightly outside of this. That's fine. And I don't want to have to worry about tucking under here at the end. That's a detail that doesn't interest me at this point. So I'm going to cut it off before it gets there. Just do an adjustable blend curve between these two so I get something smooth. Delete this internal curve and bring this back. Okay, I want this to be wide enough to work. I now have a closed curve and I need the seam to stay at the bottom, so I'm going to check that. I want it to seam right there. Curve perpendicular. I just want to make sure I have enough to encompass the ends of this. Trim that off. I'm going to rebuild this into a single curve. Got a lot of points. Single curve for this could be 30. I like an odd number. So we'll make it 35. If you do an odd number, you always have a point in the middle and symmetrical layout of points to the sides. So what I need to know is how long is this? And the outside of that cuff is 179.492. So I'm going to create that same length in a straight line. I'm going to move it into the center. So these will be my flow curves. Delete that first one, so I don't get confused and you don't get confused. There. Those are my flow curves. This one for the top view. This one for the front view. Okay. Now I know they're the same length. I'll double check that now. 179.492. 179.492. However, mathematically they're very different. This curve is 2.1, whereas this one was 35.4. So I'm going to rebuild this to match. This last integers that I use will be still locked into this dialog box, so I just have to hit OK. Now you'll see if I turn on points, these two curves look very similar. That's what you want. When you're flowing geometry in Rhino, the more these two have in common, the better. Now, usually you can get by I could get by with a curve that had 112 points and a curve that had 2, and it will float. Rhino will let you do it. However, the more sophisticated your geometry is, the more helpful it is to have those mathematically match. Because what you're always looking for in CAD modeling is predictability. So let's take a look at what we have. Right now, this model is supposed to come to just a little bit inside of the ends of that. And right now, it doesn't. Okay? Right now, it is a long ways from those two ends. That's because this template, when I first drew it, was drawn using the inside radius instead of the outside radius. Of that cuff. And there's a tremendous difference in length. So, turn off my grid again, so I can see more easily. I'm going to go ahead and put this on another layer for safekeeping. So I need to lengthen this back out again. And we already know we have a fit here we don't really want to mess with, which once again, unfortunately, means we're going to be cropping this here and then stretching it back out again. Would it have been more efficient for me to have settled this front view first? Yeah, it would have. But I didn't. So, a little more time on the video. Offset through point, both sides, and snap. Grab this and split it. Grab one side of this, and I didn't even have to split that, by the way. That was superfluous. I could just grab this and explode it. Join these back together because it's a polycurve. There's a seam there anyway. Non-uniform scale. By the way, I'm in top C-plane. Turning off the grid is going to make it harder for you to follow me. So I'm in top C-plane right now. Non-uniform scale again. Starting from here. And I'm going to move that out to roughly here. Okay, it's supposed to come up pretty close to that, so that's fine. Here's the thing. I need to look at that and see just how crazy that looks. I think that looks a little bit crazy, so I'm not going to do it. Instead, I'm going to take the outline from the center. Leave those stones in their window alone. And I'm going to split the difference. Scale the whole thing, and then scale this little paddle extension here. I think that gives the least distorted effect. So I do need to blend a curve in between here to make sure that these things are transitioning the way they should. In between, because remember, in the finished model, this goes over and under. So that over and under has to still work. And I need to take it from the fattest point of this, so These both tend to be fabs at the same place, so I can use the same curve. So I will trim this. Actually, I'll split it because I want to be able to see it as a reference. Get a good contrasting color. And I want to stay as close to the original as I can. But it becomes pretty clear that I'm going to be filling in a little there. Okay. I want to mirror that above and below because it has to be consistent. This line is no longer true. This line is no longer true. Same thing here. Split these. And curve blend. And I can remain quite faithful to the original there. And that would simply be mirrored over as well. As we know, these are supposed to be one curve. And this is also supposed to be a single curve. All the way up into there. So now that I've got that, rebuild. Go with 25. Turn on my points. Turn on my graph. Address them one at a time. Maintain that smoothness across the center. By point shuffle, drag horizontal with shift. And at the end, by vertical, doing the same thing. The rest of this should be pretty much as it was. And since it was a blend curve, it'll be beautifully smooth through there, no problems. With this long, graceful curve, this point is annoying, so as I've been doing consistently, remove it. Shift drag horizontal. Finish that just a little bit through there. And same thing down here. Going to do that same vertical treatment where I get a nice smooth flow across there. Now I should be able to mirror these all the way around. And recreate my top view very quickly. That's the new top view. I'm going to copy it up above so I don't lose it, and then clean it up like I did before, where I take out all the inside lines. Quicker just to come in here and hit select objects and then hit trim. And join. So that's my main object. Still have my two flow curves and my top view. So going to now flow this along here. To do that, I'm going to extrude straight down, deeper than I need. Solid yes. I do not want both sides. I do not want grid snap. I don't really care how deep it is, so long as it's too deep. I need it to be at least that 6 millimeters or so, something like that. Okay, now it might be useful to me as I think about it to have these curves. I'll come back and get them later. Transform, flow along curve. And there it is. Take my front view that is just slightly inside and just slightly undersized. Now see, here's an unfortunate reality. See what happened here? Even though I tried to estimate that by eye, I ended up too short. I have a couple of choices here. I'll take you through them both. One is to repeat the command with history, which I should have done in the first place. Go to a different layer, lock the orange layer so I don't accidentally click on this ever again. Take this and let's do a extrusion so we can see it clearly. How these two interact. It's that pocket at the end I kind of want to get rid of. I honestly don't care very much because it's a maquette, but if I want to get rid of it. Transform non-uniform scale. This should be so little that it won't make any real difference to the settings on the inside. And history should have updated to where I have almost a perfect fit. And I don't want any more perfect than that, because more perfect than that will end up giving me a Boolean hassle later. So I will stop there. I will leave this as it is so that I can see in the future that I did stretch it ever so slightly. Okay. Unfortunately, I didn't extrude that deep enough to work, so come back. And actually, I'll just do an extrusion solid yes. And then do a solid intersection. And that is a pretty quick example of how to make this work. Now, I'm going to look at my drawing to refresh my memory. It goes over and then over, right? So if I want to capture those lines in my maquette, I have several choices on how to do so, but I'm thinking the easiest one is once again the trusty blend curve. Take both of these curves and pull them to the surface. Delete input equals yes. And the same thing over here. And pull. And there I have it. Okay? A nice maquette to show me what this object is looking like. And that's all a maquette is supposed to do. All right? If I'm using it as a design tool, then I can quickly generate curves from this. Like so. Okay. The 3/4 view is never accurate size, so I'll just throw it away. I'll go ahead and put these red curves on these pulled curves on the same layer as the object, so I don't have to keep picking them up separately. And then I will group these so I don't have to keep selecting them separately. So there's a quick drawing of it. If I want a 3/4 view, that's easy for me to do. I'm going to put a sphere in the center. I'm going to make the diameter 10 millimeters. And I'm going to put that sphere wherever I want the 10 millimeters to be accurate. Inside of the center of the wrist, at the top. Usually for me, it's at the top. Because when you have a perspective view, you only have accurate scale in one place. So I'm going to center this up at the top. I'm going to grab both of these, and then I'm going to rotate my viewport until I get a view of my cuff that I think I want to use for sketching it in 3D, or for doing more complete design work or design development in 3D. Let's say there is working for me. Okay, back to dimension, make 2D drawing. Now it's the view. Okay, going to do it again without changing the viewport at all, with just the object. Okay, now I'm going to move that one off of the other because it gets difficult to select between them if I don't. That just makes them easier to pick up. Now I'm going to turn off my original object, and I'm going to draw a circle at the center of my viewport. 10 millimeters. This is an accurate 10 millimeter circle. Okay, so if you keep following that path of logic, if that is an accurate 10 millimeter circle, and I orient this object to be the same size, it will be accurate size. So, transform, orient 2 points, scale yes, 3D is fine. Copy, no, I need a center and a quadrant probably. I need to pick two pick points because it's asking for them. Reference point 1. I'll pick the center. Reference point 2. I'll pick the top quadrant. Reference point, target point 1, center. Target point 2, quadrant. That's actual size. I ended up leaving these little lines behind, which surprises me. I don't need this anymore. Now I'm going to take this drawing, and I'm going to orient it as well, picking 2 points that I have in this drawing and that drawing to do so. There, throw away the copy that has the, doesn't have the lines. And there we go. Okay, so that's it. I've created a maquette for design purposes. If I want to use it for that, it gives me a nice 3/4 view to sketch from and draw from and illustrate on top of. I didn't put the stones in. I'm not going to bother with that for this tutorial, but I could easily do them. So I have this. I'm going to go into an orthographic top view. File, print, image file, 7.5 by 10. View and output scale, should be 100%, 1:1. Millimeter equals a millimeter. Line types and widths. Normally, I go with the 0.13. But with a large drawing like this, I'll go to 0.18. And I hit print. Asks me for a location. I put it here. We'll call it Rhino Out. And that's gone. So I've taken this line work out. Now, if I don't want to use it for a design, well, that's easy too. I now have the basic corpus of a piece that I can now come in and start doing sophisticated modeling on. Finished surface modeling to make a cuff that I like. Okay? Just as a follow-up, because I started with this in Photoshop. For a sense of poetry, we'll end there as well. Poetry is a good word, but completion. I can bring this same design up, and actually there may be a version with a bigger canvas which would be helpful to me. Okay, so I have this. Now I can open Rhino Out here. Select my drawing, copy it, and paste it. And you can see actual size, actual size. We now have a side view. We have all kinds of things that we can now use to make a more developed design. You know, before, to do a technical drawing of that would have, my front view was pretty guessed. I guessed it pretty accurately. But now, I have a much stronger base to do a really accurate technical drawing and to really develop this design further. Okay? So, I'll end this in Rhino. That's it. Thanks for watching.